Welcome to Funnel Reboot, the podcast that shares ideas on how to upgrade your lead generation. Here is your host, Glenn Schmeltzley.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot, where we explore how to upgrade our lead generation. Today, we're getting into how business is being changed by voice-driven applications. But first, if you're trying to keep up with how data science and AI are impacting the marketing landscape, I'd encourage you to check out episode 57. It's just me talking, and I gave a full plan for how to enable these tools in your marketing. I'll also remind you that you can talk to me about what you heard in any episode. I want to get your feedback, so please tweet me at Funnel Reboot or comment back to me on Instagram, or leave listener feedback at 613-703-7073, or you can use the feedback form on the funnelreboot.com site. Voice technology is so prevalent that I'm actually giving a disclaimer on this episode before we get started because we're referring to some voice assistants by name. So smart speakers or digital assistants within earshot will, notice. And their existence is a real proof point of how so many of us are users of voice recognition. But at the same time, few of us know how to use it for marketing in our companies. Coming up with applications is hard. It's a platform whose interface is invisible, and few of us are exposed to the artificial intelligence behind it, so we really can't picture what we do with it. As the Steve Jobs saying goes, a lot of times people don't know what they want until you show it to them. To get some help with this, we're going to talk with a company that launched a voice AI tool and is happy to peel back the curtain on how this all works. Our guests are both from UCLab, a software development firm in Ottawa, Canada. Listen for how this technology began with simple single-word commands to where voice technology can now process whole paragraphs containing advanced grammar structures. You'll learn in this episode how it goes beyond just saying turn on or turn off. Now it can interact with calendars and documents and other software. Our guests will share how AI monitors which points someone brings up on a call and whether it was said in a positive or a negative way. So before you talk again, you're ready for that objection. And also hear how detecting different human voices lets a meeting assistant AI pull out items in the discussion and email them as action items to the people involved. There's bound to be some good ideas here for how to use this in your marketing or your work life. So let's go to the interview. Today, I'm delighted to welcome two people who are going to speak to us about voice technologies. And I'm going to start by introducing Debra. Debra, say hello.
Hey, my name's Debra Workman, and I am one of the managing partners at UCLab.
And we are also joined by Justin Hacker.
Great to be here. I am the CEO and a co-founding partner at UCLab.
That's great. It's wonderful to have you both. So we'll talk a little later about what UCLab does, but let's start with this general field and the ability for computing to include voice. I was looking into this. I was shocked by how far back this all goes. In my brief recollections, we can even step into the post-war era with some of the early mainframe computers. There was one I understand called Audrey in the 1950s. Now, it could only understand numbers 1 to 10, but that's the start. And I guess my next memory comes up in there was a software that we used to load with diskettes onto Windows computers, and it was called Dragon Dictate. And I remember that I could use that to, maybe put a paragraph onto the page of a word processor. I do remember there were a couple of even stuffed toys. And I guess in the mid 90s, we started to see a few cool things like dolls that could understand some voice commands. I guess the next large step up was in kind of the world of entertainment, where IBM Watson showed up on Jeopardy and beat the two Jeopardy champions. That was in 2011. So we're already 10 years past that. So yeah, Deborah, do you remember any of those early other places where either it hit the headlines or you actually started interacting with a voice?
Well, so where I was working, they had decided that they were going to replace the receptionist with a virtual receptionist. And so you would call in, you would ask for someone, and they would say hi and then put you through to that person, you know. And being a smart Alec, I called our head office and I asked for Piggly Wiggly.
Ah,
And they said Steve Whitley and put me through to Steve Whitley. And, we just had a big laugh about it. And from that point on, we called him Piggly Wiggly.
oh, nice.
Um,
Poor
yes,
guy.
I also, yeah, I know. Because, anyway, and then my other recollection is the Furby. Do you remember the Furby?
That's one
Freaky
of the ones
thing.
I was trying to think. I couldn't remember it.
Yeah, those
Yeah,
things are pretty haunted.
Yeah, because you couldn't shut the thing off. My daughter had one, and she put it under her bed, and one night in the middle of the night, it started talking, and that just, that was just. But you would talk to it, and it would talk back. It was, it would say
right,
hi, basic commands, but it would definitely do it. And it was I guess the forefathers of the bigger and better stuff that we deal with now. I mean, every time you call anywhere, you can't even get you call FedEx, you get
right,
AI. You call
right.
RBC, you get AI. You call anywhere, or most places now, you will get a virtual assistant, a virtual person answering the phone, who then asks you a series of questions, and up based on your response, is looking for where we're going to put you.
Well, and what's interesting is a lot of them are still kind of a caricature of what it should be, because one of my earliest memories of voice recognition was an episode of The Simpsons where he had a one of those proto tablets, and he was trying to say "beat up Martin" as a task to do, and it says "eat up Newton." And I feel like that's what we're getting when we call into a lot of these places that you listed.
Yeah. So yeah, we have to remember that, and especially for lower functions like a switchboard operator, that yeah, we're probably looking back 10 years when we interact with those technologies. Those aren't being updated nearly at the rate as what we have, let's say, on our phones. And that, this to me, like in the 2010s, this is the decade where I think this has really gone mainstream, because I can't imagine anybody listening to this hasn't had an interaction with an Alexa or a Cortana or
Uh,
Siri,
Google.
which of course started it, or the Google Assistant, right? So, if that brings us up to the present, I guess what we want to take a minute to do is to peel behind um, what is happening with these and on a human level. So, I'll just kind of ask both of you to kind of think about what we are seeing different in terms of us. So if I think back to something as simple as a Google search. Google search, when it was only on a keyboard, I would have to type this like staccato, not real word, like not full sentence, definitely. It would be, and I'm a slow typist. So I would type in nouns and then try to, go back to the search results. And maybe after 3 or 4 times of pruning and culling, I would eventually get what I want. And that's not what's happening anymore. What's happening, especially if it's on my phone, is I'm just speaking a complete sentence, a whole thought to it. And yet, I'm sure on the back end, it's probably having to do what it did when I was just using a couple of those keywords. So maybe Deborah, if you could tell me, like, do you think that we as humans are like in the groove now on voice? Do you think that it's actually
I
something that
I actually
is
think
here?
maybe I think it depends on the actual generation, and I'm going to give you for instance. Um, my grandchildren were over. I have grandchildren. My grandchildren are over, and the He's like 4 and he's saying, Google, shut off the TV. And of course, the TV is shut off. And for them, that is normal.
Yeah.
For us, that's like, whoa. So I really think it's having a big impact. And I think when that generation grows up, I just can't imagine what they're going to be able to do. And it's just going to be all voice commands. And it takes me to Wally. You know the whole movie Wally?
Yes.
Manuel, and it's actually a hand manual, but he keeps saying Manuel because he thinks it's going to do something. Manuel, open this, or yeah. I'm in awe of where we're going with all this.
There was a Star Trek episode, is not an episode, one of the movies with the original cast, and Scotty is taken to a computer, and he had first been taken through time to the 1990s, and so he's standing in front of a computer, and somebody says, "Would you like to use it?" He's like, "Sure." So he says, "Hello, computer." It does nothing, and the guy says, "Here's the keyboard," and he's very disgruntled. Like, "Oh man." So if things like, typing and only getting in through a keyboard is becoming passe, there's a couple kind of changes to that. I think even in terms of business and even down into realms like marketing, I have heard that now that we're trusting the technology, right? It's accurate enough, at least when we're using a search engine or Amazon Alexa, like a smart speaker. People are doing things like they're asking it for recommendations on toothbrushes and other things that are so basic we would never have searched those before, but we're doing it because it's so frictionless. And that's really interesting to me, how it's changing us. And I'm just interested in either if you have any thoughts on, is that a good thing? Does that open up some more floodgates for, ways that voice can be used, because we're kind of now rewiring ourselves for it?
I think, like Debra said earlier, it's a bit generational, because I know my grandparents' opinion on it is they think it's making people lazy. You don't have to use your other skills. They're still pen and paper. They never really adopted to the computer, so they see this all as some kind of hocus pocus.
Mm-hmm.
In our sense of what we're doing, we're trying to use that adaptation people are getting to technology and voice command and things like that, and use it to make their tasks easier in the day to day. And I think that's what Alexa is doing. I think that's what Google Home's doing, and all these other voice commands. They're just trying to make your ability to do things that much quicker, that much more efficient, that much easier. There's no turning on your laptop. There's no turning on your tablet. Waiting for it to boot. Whatever. You just say what's on your mind, and it's in front of you.
Yeah, and this isn't like, we shouldn't minimize this. This, because they need to be ready for the prompt, so they are listening, and we have, it seems, as a society, moved to the point where we're ready for that. We weren't ready. For example, I remember when Microsoft first tried the Xbox Kinect. And for those who remember that, everybody freaked out when they heard that the Kinect would start your Xbox for you. But to do that, it meant that it had to listen 24/7, so that if you said Xbox turn on, it would do that. And right, that kind of kiboshed that product line, right? But it seems like we're ready for this now.
Yeah, it didn't. It didn't, right? Because we all have these things sitting on our counters now that are just constantly listening for, okay Google, hey Alexa, and people have seemed to forgot that hey Xbox was a bad thing 10 years ago.
And I think that the key is it tied it to, as you said, Justin, a convenience. It tied it to an action that we find mundane, and like sped it up for us and made it simpler. So I think that that's great. And, it's obviously great for people like Amazon, who figured out how to bake that into commerce.
I think it's a tool. I think it's another tool, like any tool. We're not going to go back and make butter using an old butter churn.
Right.
And as we move ahead, we're going to stop doing skills. I don't know how to make butter. I don't know if you guys know how to make
Nope.
butter, but these are things that we don't need to know anymore. So, you're not going to need to know how to keyboard if you can just talk to the computer. That's amazing because there are a lot of people who still don't know how to keyboard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the skills that maybe we know are going to be passe, but there's going to be new skills. And it's just going to grow with us, and it's a tool. It's not running our lives. We're running it.
Yeah, very good point. And for those of us who are moving into giving the thoughts that are in our head out through our mouths, it's a great tool because it allows not only dictation and minute taking and things like that and reminders to be set, but it's really going to allow us to frankly self-explore. People that I know that do, let's say, a lot of journaling and dictation and goal setting, um, people who believe in like the quantified life, right, who are wearing something on their wrist and other wearables, they are actually liberated by the fact that they've got all these computers that are gathering in whatever mode we're most comfortable with, right? Because then, as you say, Deborah, we're controlling it. We can harness that and then choose, well, this is now what I want to do with it. Like if I want to write a book and I've already, said 50,000 words to this thing, well, in a way, I've got my book, I've got my corpus, right?
Yeah.
I'm a long way towards getting there.
And I could see this adapting to be a companion for seniors. This would be like an ideal thing for seniors at some point, in the future, that where they would, because the biggest complaint you hear about seniors is loneliness. A virtual entity speaking and having a conversation, which you kind of can have a conversation. Although personally, I have arguments with Google, but that's my husband says stop arguing with Google.
Deborah, we're on the cusp of being able to have maybe general assistance. And I know that Hollywood has movies like Her, which show a real doom and gloom. But when when there's the ability for um, us to talk with our devices and to have them talk back, what do you see as being possible there?
Well, as I mentioned, or I don't know if it was recorded, but I can see it as a companion to seniors. I think this is going to be for someone who is, alone. And, during the pandemic, I think this is like, showed us that there is a lot of people alone that need conversations. And, they need for conversations and need someone to listen to. So I think that would probably be, something that would be an asset to everyone. I mean, and then, like you're saying, the journal entry, I think it could also be, it's good for mental health, just to be able to talk to somebody, to have somebody listen.
Mhm.
And then there's so many other aspects that, obviously AI is more, is brought into um, different different products, different programs, it does so much more. But at
Yeah,
least the
and I'm
basics,
glad you
the
brought
voice.
that up. That's absolutely what we should talk about now is really what's happening behind the scenes here. And nobody better than Justin to help us with that. So, Justin, if you can maybe lay out for me, I think it's fair to kind of think of this as a ladder where there's some basic things like, does a computer understand um, and look for a keyword like turn on? Or is there actual processing happening? So maybe can you just lay out for us, being someone who builds these applications, what do you have to be able to do to be able to handle simple and then more complex kinds of voice interaction?
Yeah, and I think you're spot on with the keyword matching. I mean, that's how things were historically, and up until actually the last 10, 11 years is keyword matching. So they're looking for specific keywords inside of a phrase in order to decide what its next action is. I mean, that's how we end up getting, an IVR to work, right? It just
Yep.
looks for the keywords in the
Interactive
names.
voice response. Yep.
And today, what's the shift is thanks to the advances in artificial intelligence, it's able to understand or have a facsimile of an understanding of context. So if you were just talking to it about a hamburger, I mean, if you move on to the next part, you can say you want lettuce, tomato, onion on your hamburger, right?
Or you could
And
say, I just want lettuce, onion, and tomato on that.
Exactly, and it'll understand the context is of a hamburger and that you are making an order, and that's kind of the magnitude of where it's going. It's the better it gets at understanding the context of what's being said, the more capable it becomes. And today we're pretty far along, but there are some limitations in context understanding. Um,
So where is it going to get that context? Like I've heard of GPT-3, and I heard that, they basically dumped all of Wikipedia and like a good chunk of the whole internet text
mhm.
into GPT-3. Is it trying to look against all of those things when it's forming that facsimile of an understanding?
For the case of GPT-3, that's exactly what it's trying to do. It's trying to say how many conversations have I seen that are similar to this? The structure of this, is it going in this direction? And that's why GPT-3 is really good at writing things like short stories and articles and things like that, because it's basically pulling from its understanding, and I say understanding loosely because it's not quite how we think, but it has all the connections to say that the sky is blue, the grass is green, um, you know, and it puts together what it thinks is likely what you want to see, and that's one of its biggest strengths and its criticism that it gets.
Well, let's just talk about that kind of what it's going to see. So, yeah, if I'm right, and if I think back to how they explained how Watson works, I mean, I know we've come a long way since then, but I think the foundation is somewhat the same. That it'll, like when Watson was asked a computer on Jeopardy, it would try and find out things that could be the answer, but then it would put those together and run them through a few filters
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
almost like a neural network, say, well, was it more like this or was it more like that, and then kind of put the confidence levels that it has on each one, and then the one that is both above, let's say, 90% confidence and that's farthest out ahead of those answers, that's what it gives. So are we like, because I really do want to make this point, we're not yet at the stage where these truly understand you, like if you're sitting down beside a friend you've known for years and you're talking with them how they understand you, right? But is that roughly what they're trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's all a numbers game right now, and you're spot on with the probability. So it's going by the highest probability of being correct. Um, which is why in things we do, we have to try to augment that data, right? We have to try to figure out additional ways we can filter out the wrong answer. Because I mean, if you've ever played with GPT-3, it can get the wrong answer to some great degree.
Oh, I get spaghetti sentences back. I get something, if I'm talking with it about sports, all of a sudden it's going over to like, particle physics, and it's trying, and that's why I think one of the best things that frankly people in a business mode and especially marketers can consider is we don't have to like sit and wait around for this to um, get good across all those things. We can narrow the application that we have for it, and that's why I think
Exactly.
it's great for us to have specific things like, okay, do you understand what I'm saying when I'm asking you what the indications and contraindications are for this particular pharmaceutical, right?
Right. Exactly.
Um, Now that's where they work well on kind of a one-to-one basis. Where UCLabs is taking things is we're already good at talking with other humans, and so you are now looking at ways that voice technology can be used to listen in on how human to human interactions go. There are some people who are trying this, for example, applying it to sales calls and grabbing all the information out of those sales calls and trying to help, let's say, the manager of a sales team guide their reps on how to have better conversations. What specific use cases do you see as being very applicable today using the technology?
Yeah, I think, um, especially in a sales scenario, I think it's great at coaching people because especially if you're in a larger call. I mean, you can't really monitor the room as well as you'd like. I mean, you can't be seeing what the expression is on everyone's face at any given moment, especially when you get into more than 8, 9 people. I mean, they're not even on the screen most of the time. AIs are really good at picking out sentiment, is something we found. So one of the things we try to do is discern the sentiment of any given moment in a meeting. So are your participants reacting the way you want to what you've just said? Um, are they participating in the meeting? Like how much time have they spent actually participating, and is it positive participation? Or do you have a disengaged meeting going on? Are people just clamming up? Are they, whenever they're saying things, it's short, it's curt? Is that happening? And at the end, it gives you a nice little piece of feedback on how you're doing in these metrics, and then what you can do to improve.
So yeah, let's talk about that, because you have an application right now that will run in the background like that. And so let's imagine that I am maybe making a webinar presentation, and I need to be focused completely on making that presentation. You're telling me that there's information that can be socked away while I'm doing that, that later on I can use to inform me on how well I did, right?
Exactly.
So what is it doing?
Uh,
Tell me what, I know you've got Blue Cap, and I'd like to hear about, like, maybe in that context, what is it able to do?
so Blue Cap right now is, so we've already talked a little bit about the analytics, but on a base level, it's your assistant in the meeting. It's able to take notes on the fly. It's able to record the transcription, so speech to text. It's able to assist you with some commands during the meeting. So if you need to, discreetly, um, invite someone or something, you can just type it into the chat and it'll do it for you. After the meeting, it also then, kind of collates a good summary um, of the meeting in, plain English.
Yeah, but you might also want to mention that you can actually put into the application. So if this was a sales call and I want to, um, and it's with my clients, and I want to see uh, how they feel about my competition. So I can enter in whom I believe are my competition in the background in the dashboard. So when I'm having my meeting, if any of my clients mention my competition, it takes the sentiment score of the person mentioning the competition. How do they feel about my competition? Now, this could be in a certain context. I may be talking about a certain feature that I'm presenting,
Yep.
and they're going to tell me that blah, blah, blah has a similar feature. But if they're really happy about it, then I need to know that that's going to be that's going to be something that I'm going to have to overcome. That's an objection in sales. That's an objection. So we want to be able to say yes, so and so does do this, but ours does. But it's an opportunity. So it's actually analyzing. So we get to put in our competition. We also get to put in products or whatever we want to pull sentiments out of an actual meeting. Sorry to jump in, Justin.
Oh, no problem. That's an important part of it. And I think to expand on that even more, it can also like kind of map recurring concepts. So if you can imagine, you're in a product's life cycle and you're doing technical support, and you're trying to track a recurring issue, it can automatically pull out things like that.
So this metadata that we're getting, which I suppose, if I think about myself and how I am involved on a meeting or a presentation that I'm doing, all I walk away with, if I don't have something like this, are a couple of chicken scratch notes of what I remember. And they're probably just the action items. And of course, I better not lose that piece of paper before I get those somewhere that I actually will action them. You're telling me, though, there's like a whole lot of stuff that I can be passive. I don't have to actively do anything to gather this. It's being gathered for me.
Mhm.
And it also sounds like it's something that I haven't maybe yet thought to use, but it's now down at the cost level, and it's ubiquitous enough that I can use it. And I can think of other examples of people who've used it. The two places I thought of were TV and movies. So we've all heard that before a movie gets to the big screen, there are closed previews. And the audience that is sitting there for those closed previews, they're drilled, before they leave the theater on what they thought and marking down at different points of the movie how their sentiment was. Or I think of Nielsen. And Nielsen had, those panels of families, and they would give them boxes, and they would, press a button when they were maybe unhappy with a message that they saw, or vice versa. So is it fair to say, though, that, this technology has been used by people to try to gauge sentiment? It's just we haven't had the opportunity to use it because it's been so costly.
Essentially, yeah. And I think the thing that's really nice about it is you're not prompting your users for these feedback, right? So you're not doing a poll, and you're not doing something where they're prompted, and they kind of feel obligated to give you the good response or the bad response or whatever they feel obligated to do. It's just naturally taking this from the course of the conversation.
Right. And you literally have the assistant sitting as if it were attending a conversation, like in days of old, there would be a physical transcriptionist or a physical, right, executive assistant. So that's a concept we all grasp.
It also does, and I don't think you meant, I don't know if you did it, and maybe I missed it, but Blue Cap actually does take the action items. So if there is something that you say, okay, let's follow up, let's get together and follow up Thursday, it not only puts that action item in a list and for you to take away, so it's all your takeaway points, um, but it also will connect with your CRM and will actually put it in your CRM.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And the fact that other people can be receiving things out of it, even if they weren't, let's say, part of the organization that has it, I think that's important too, because that's how technologies like these catch on, right? If we think of Dropbox did that, right? I would have Dropbox and you wouldn't, and I would put a file on it and you could go get it. But of course, you were being asked to sign up for Dropbox, as you did.
And that's why we all have Dropbox.
Yeah. The other great thing, and I don't know about I'm sure Glenn, this has happened to you. You go to a meeting, with a customer, and then I don't know, you months and months go by, and then you have another meeting with the customer, and he brings up a point that he had in that meeting that you took notes on. And you've got to go and find your little notebook or
Yeah.
wherever you wrote it down. Then you're going to say, okay, where, what date? Oh, that was probably, that was that was in April. So where's my book where my April is? And I'm going to have to go through
Oh,
every
goodness.
single thing. We've all done this. We've
Yes.
all done this. And this is searchable. So not only can you search in a specific meeting in a transcript, so I want to search in that transcript where we said this, I can also search all my meetings for a specific topic or item that I'm looking for.
Yes.
I mean, there's just the sky's the limit.
It can be. And so I want to explore, as far as limits go, let's look ahead for a minute here. And I first want to explore what happens when the assistants talk back. So I don't know if this is anywhere on the roadmap for Blue Cap, but if they talk back, we can have potentially some good things. Potentially they will come into play as an agent for us, and we can think of them like a mini version of the agent that we already have on any of our smartphones. Or they might turn into these things like I saw in Minority Report, where they're, noticing who I am and asking me if I want a new pair of Gap jeans. Justin, do you maybe want to talk about what you foresee on them talking back?
Yeah, I think we're there on them being able to talk back. It's just how meaningful is it right now, right? Because the Gap jeans thing is actually pretty apt as to how it's being used right now. A lot of it is to spout out pre-recorded stuff. I think as context advances, which is one of the goals of Google and all the other ones working on it, it'll get better at being able to have natural conversations with people. I don't think we're there yet, but I think that is the ultimate goal of
and
entire
I think we also have to remember they are predicting and measuring their prediction. So if their prediction was, if I say this to 10 people and 3 of them buy the jeans, I'm doing well. But if I say it to 10 people and 0 take my action, let's remember that the AI is meant to improve itself. And so I don't want to be so doom and gloom as I let on. Just going to finish with maybe one other possibility is, can you foresee assistants talking to other assistants? And I don't mean like verbally, but interacting like an API call to one another. Are we maybe reaching?
Well, I mean, I think we're already kind of there. I mean, because even when you're working with like a Google Home or something, I mean, that's a number of agents talking to each other. Our healthcare product that we're working on as well also is based on that. I mean, we have a mixture of Amazon technologies talking to Google technologies, talking to I even think we have some Watson baked in there, and that's the great thing about the way things are with the cloud now is all these agents are talking to each other already and getting meaningful bits of data, because they're all, instead of building one mega AI that just does everything, which is quite impossible now because of the computing power required. A lot of these companies are building specialized AI. So, one's specializing in health, one's specializing in recognizing documents, one's specializing in conversation. So, in order to have a successful AI project now, you really have to be putting your fingers into all these different projects in order to get one comprehensive product.
And if we have consumer experiences that we want to improve as marketers, this is something we're going to have to get used to, is how does, even if we build voice on the front end, what are the back end systems that we're going to get information for to make life better for our consumer? It's fascinating stuff. I want to thank you very much both for joining us. And I'll finish by asking, how can people find out about UCLab and both of you?
UCLab, it's UCLab.ai, so UCLab.ai. And to find out about us, we're both on LinkedIn. You can look up our LinkedIn profile and reach out to us. Be happy to talk.
Well, thank you.
Let's not forget
go ahead.
to bluecap.ai as well for the
the
meeting assistant program.
bluecap.ai.
Perfect.
So we came up with a little jingle. I have to say it because it's
there we
cute.
go.
You want me to sing it? If you want to give it a try, bluecap.ai.
Oh, beautiful.
There's that classic marketing coming out.
All right. Well, until you get your assistant saying that, we'll go with your voice.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Anyway,
and
thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. And
Thanks
to those listening, if you have other episodes, if you have other people that you would like us to talk to try and dig into these new forms of marketing and things that can assist in your funnel, please go ahead and get in touch with me on social media at HeyGlenS or at Funnel Reboot. And thanks once again for listening.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter at Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.